Well, it's unfortunately come to my attention that Oracle has began to lay off over 30,000 employees starting this morning, 6 a.m. with a cold email. Access denied immediately. Layoffs have been strategic, but not because the company is failing. Oracle is aggressively investing in AI and cloud data centers, as most companies have been. They're cutting jobs to free up about 8 to 10 billion in cash to fund this expansion, and the company has also taken tens of billions in debt to support its AI push. Layoffs are happening across multiple countries, including US, India, Canada, Mexico. Entire divisions affected include SaaS, health, operations, revenue. My heart goes out to these people that have been affected. This is an unfortunate situation, but I want you guys to remember, like I've always said to you, be prepared for anything. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Make sure that you are prepared to move on to the next opportunity if you need to. Position yourself for that. Don't ever rely on stability. That's gone.
She is 100,000% correct. You do not want to put your fate in the hands of a company. I have been studying this, I have been looking into it. I did see where they said that they sent this out at 3 a.m. Pacific, which was 6 a.m. Eastern time. But the majority of the people that were laid off were not in the United States of America, as I can look up. I haven't been seeing a lot of people that said, hey, I work at Oracle, I've been laid off. I also reached out to their human resources department while I was on a Millionaire Morning Show, and they sent me a call back, but then I hung up, and then they sent me another call back to where that was like 8 hours later. So I'm assuming that their human resource department is slammed. But yes, they are offering severance. If you've been there for a year or less, you get 4 weeks. For every additional year that you've worked there, you get an additional week, up to 26 weeks. And so I've been studying this. I actually went and looked at the letter. I'll get into that in a little bit. But more importantly, again, she's correct. You do not want to ever listen. There hasn't been stability in a workplace ever, ever. Even your grandfather that worked for Ford, Chrysler, and GM at the time, and they promised them pensions after 30 years at work. They were getting laid off and on, even to the point to where now they have it to where they basically retool twice a year in the summertime, and then I think once in the wintertime going into the new year. And they started leveraging temporary workers because, first of all, they couldn't keep up the pensions, so pensions are completely gone, and now you're starting to see cost cutting across the board, even in the federal government, because we become more efficient, but more important, we become more reliant on these companies in order to survive.
Ka'Allah Yamla, Yahweh Bashim Al Shah Bashim Kakadash, the bonus of the apostles of Els Great Millstone, peace, citation, hopeful, Shalom. And as you can see in the video that Anton Daniels brought out, you got this so-called black woman that she pretty much was mentioning about how, you know, around 6 a.m. she got the email about how Oracle is just laying off, 30,000 people, and apparently she was one of them. And you see, this is what happens when, of course, you put your trust in Esau. You think that, you have a high position in the company and you're working at one of the biggest firms, and, you think you're safe. And the whole time it's like, even these big firms, they making some adjustments, they're making some changes. You know, you might think that you in the win on the winning team because you work in a decent firm, and then not only that, you're working a decent firm with good perks and benefits, and that seems to be a permanent job, you know, for the meantime, as long as you're doing what you got to do. But even if you do all that, and even if you're a top performer at what you do, if they have it to where your position could potentially be taken by AI, they will do it. And sometimes, you know, you may come across like shady people on the job that might try to set you up to get screwed over, to make you lose your job, or you come across, like, let's say the company has made bad investments or so, and it has to downsize, so they have to get rid of positions that are deemed as not, as significant as other positions that they may need for the meantime. And things like that do happen, and granted, you know, let's just say that the positions that some people hold, it just might not be in the company's budget. It might not be within their means to actually pay someone for holding that position. And sometimes they might even just probably cut your pay. And even bilk certain benefits or so. They might even try to, some things that they promised that they were to give to you, it just may be very well taken away, or those promises may not be met. And this is what happens when you put your trust in Esau. Because I mean, don't get me wrong, it's nothing bad about doing what you got to do, to make your ends meet and try to get your daily bread and all that stuff. And if it's in your passion or your spirit to go as far as like trying to achieve a particular goal, as long as they don't distract you from serving the Most High to the best of your ability, then by all means go for it in a sense. But just don't think it's everything, and just don't put your all into this world, because now you see AI is taking over, and it's going to eventually affect these other businesses that are like, you know I would say like medium sized or even small companies. And at this point, these large companies may just very well buy off the small companies and the middle sized companies, and you know pretty much push this whole AI shit on them as well. And they may go as far as just having no need for certain positions that could be done by the use of AI. And now, with that being said, people have to go as far as upskilling and pretty much doing a career switch and find a different career field that could help them, even get their foot in the door, so they could be able to be employed, so they could utilize, the AI system and go as far as, pretty much putting food on the table, just to even survive. Because in the midst of this AI shit, man, like, this is a real scary field, because it's now just taking over so many jobs, even tech jobs too. And 6 a.m. is a time that, is definitely before breakfast. Usually breakfast people may take it at, maybe 8 a.m. or, to 11 a.m. or so. But, and sometimes when you wake up, you might not even check what you call it, your email, which it is pretty much ideal to check your email, before you go to the work site, because, fuck around and you driving or traveling just to get to the office, and they tell you that, you gotta pretty much give up your what you call it, your uniform, and then your technology on site, that you had to get laid off or so. And that really sucks to hear that message. And the whole time the company ain't even compensate you for your last trip that you went to visit the site, to thinking that you was gonna work, but then you had to hear that unfortunate message. So without further ado, I'm gonna bring out this article right here from Yahoo Finance, and then after that, I'll bring out some scriptures. And Lord willing, make this lesson edifying. It says, Oracle lays off up to 30,000 staff with 6 a.m. email. So this is by Vishwam Sankaran on Wednesday, April 1st, 2026 at 10:31 a.m. 2-minute read. It says tech giant Oracle has laid off thousands of its workforce in massive job cuts that could reportedly impact 30,000 employees globally amid the company's push to fund for more artificial intelligence infrastructure. Employees in the US, India, Canada, Mexico, and other countries began receiving job termination emails from Oracle leadership at about 6 a.m. local time Tuesday, sparking what could be the largest layoff in the company's history, Business Insider first reported. About 12,000 of the company's employees in India have been laid off, according to local news reports. Oracle's termination emails to its laid off staff cited broader organizational change in what is widely seen as a reference to tech giants' recent push to build more AI data centers. After careful consideration of Oracle's current business needs, we have made the decision to eliminate your role as part of a broader organizational change. As a result, today is your last working day, the email reportedly said. The cloud computing service provider employed 162,000 people as of May 2025, meaning the job cuts could affect 18% of its workforce. After signing your termination paperwork, you will be eligible to receive a severance package subject to the terms and conditions of the severance plan, the company said. Access to your computer, email, voicemail, and files will be deactivated soon, and you will be unable to log into your computer, it said in the job termination email. The mass layoffs come despite the tech giant reporting an exceptional last quarter with revenues up 22% in USD and financial results that exceeded expectation. It raised $50 billion in debt and equity in January, but said there were no further plans to raise debt in 2026. However, in recent months, the company's stocks have been on a downward slide, slipping nearly 25% since the beginning of the year, more than all of the major tech firms. Analysts wrote in January that the company could get up to $10 billion in incremental free cash by cutting 30,000 employees. Demand for AI infrastructure, both GPU and CPU, continues to exceed supply. This is directly visible, in our 553 billion remaining performance obligations, Oracle chief Clay Magouyrk said in earnings earlier this month. The tech giant has also been reportedly piloting programs with AI agents doing routine database administration work that used to require teams of engineers. Wow. And that pretty much concludes that article right there. But, it goes to show you this is, what's to come to this world, because they're just coming after a lot of jobs that they deem, as insignificant due to AI being able to automate and streamline the operation of that particular job role, at a maybe 10 to 100 times, multiplier, doing what people, pretty much aren't capable to do at such a astronomical, rate. And you see, even mention about how analysts wrote that the company could get up to 10 billion in incremental free cash by cutting 30,000 employees. So there's a whole agenda behind this shit. So it goes to show you that, like, this world, like, you people that have all your eggs in this world, like, y'all are really through, you know. And that's what a lot of you women that hold these high jobs and that been pretty much sucking and fucking your way to the top in the company to pretty much try to elevate your position, by using your promiscuous ways and, using, um, your female privilege, your whorish ways to get to the top, you know, all that's coming to an end very soon. And we're already in that time where people getting laid off every month. You hearing about a layoff, and it's not even shit. It'll be nice to say if it's hundreds of layoffs. So like I'm talking about like the amount of people that's getting laid off in the company, like maybe hundreds or so. But not we talking about thousands. We talking about some decent percentages of the company, And then at the same time, it's like, you turn your head the next day you seen about a layoff and another one and another one. This is just like, I don't know if 2026 is just I don't know if it's like the year with the highest layoff record, if I'm not mistaken, but it definitely, started to pretty much take a toll, like let's say post COVID, like the layoffs, I would say. And then it's like post COVID, you're starting to see that with these companies, they have this outstanding requirement where they're talking about, you got to have a bachelor's degree or even a master's degree with all these damn years of experience. It's just very well safe to say that the job market is really cooked at this point, if you ask me. And also wanted to point out the fact that how, that black woman sounded like she was very humble. And, um, I don't know her backstory or so, but, coming from how typical black women are really portrayed on the media, she may have very well been one of those black women that was up there feeling like, you had the peak of your pride working at a company that seems to be one of the largest, tech companies. Probably felt like no one could bring you down. Probably was blessed with a certain amount of PTO where you could just take vacations, all throughout the seasons, like taking, I'm talking about like actually going out the country, traveling to different, resorts and enjoying a really lavish life, and probably even driving a car that happens to be, you know, one of those luxury cars, or maybe even a sports car that's, pretty much top of the line, having a decent credit score, having a decent credit card with a high credit line, and, probably living beyond your means. And just that email alone brought all that to an end, you know. I mean, if you had like some side businesses that you had set up on the side, just in case if you was to come across a situation like this that will set you back, financially, like if you set something up on the side, like setting up a store and all that other stuff, that would be pretty smart in the meantime, while, you know, you're not only relying on active income, that you have something, other things set aside for you to actually, financially maneuver and, make, profit while you, waiting on the another career, another job to call you back. But anyway, bring out some scriptures. The Lord will make this less edifying. So it says in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, we'll start at verse 3. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened, and the doors shall be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. And yeah, and that's pretty much going to be a time period where it's going to be dark and gloomy, and it's going to be, when the grinding is going to be very low, and we're already approaching that. This is all gradually, showing you that we're approaching Jacob's trouble. Most High is not going to hit it all in one shot. He's going to make things gradually, get to that point. Even Esau does things gradually, in a sense, because he likes to keep some people, in their delusional state while others is going through it. And then eventually he's going to bring the ones that's, in that delusional state that's so distracted with bread and circus. He's going to also, cause them to fall into some hard times too. Because ultimately, this devil is just really caring about pushing his his new world order at the end of the day. He could give a damn, he could care less about you damn people, mirth, and, and what your people care about and love so much. Esau's going to definitely use it to where he's going to use it as bait for you to take the MOTB, So all these layoffs happening, it may very well be shit at this point. If you want to come back to the same company you got laid off at, you may very well have to take that chip, and that's how he's going to bait people. So this is all planned. Like, this is all a setup for him to push that MOTB. He knows he wants to get everyone with that chip. This devil's not stupid. He's smart. He's very crafty. He's going to go by any means. Of course, he's going to start off with, he's going to do a mix. He's going to do people that work in these upper middle class jobs, people that's working these upper class income jobs, and they're not going to want to go to being poor. Like scriptures say that, for a rich man to enter the kingdom is like a camel going through the eye of a needle, you know. And people making that money, they're not gonna want to resort to being in a poor state, and waiting on the Lord. And Esau knows that. And even these regular people in the world too, that may not have, touched that level of wealth, they still, you know, are attached to this world, and they'll do anything it takes for them to get, access to their mirth, just so that they could somehow get things to go back to normal, which is not gonna happen any damn way. But anyway, it says in verse 5, also when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fear shall be in the way, and the almond tree shall flourish, and the grasshopper shall be a burden, and the desire shall fail, because man goeth to his long home, and the mourners go about the streets. Or ever the silver cord be loose, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be broken at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern. And, pretty much all these people in the world, like, they're going to be in great fear of the fact that, all these jobs not available anymore. You're going to have homelessness rising. And at the same time, you got it to where scriptures mention about how there's going to be a crying for wine in the streets at some point. Yeah. Because it's going to be a point where we're not even going to be teaching no more. Videos ain't going to be going out. You're going to have blackouts. You're going to have all type of chaos and anarchy in the streets, like a purge scenario. Scriptures kind of go into that. Not kind of, it actually goes into that. And see, the truth is going to be was what flourished in that time, because, at that point, people are going to be desperately seeking for answers. And this is a great humbling that's really coming to the world, and, most particularly women, for the most part, especially women of our nation, so-called Black, Hispanic, Native American. I know a lot of brothers like to get on the black woman, which, she's the leader of the 12 tribes of women, like Judah, Benjamin, Levi, so-called African American, and then West Indian, and Haitian women, like, that make up, the top 3 tribes, of the Israel, which is the Southern Kingdom. Because, they're usually the most proudest women from those tribes, and most particularly all of our women of our nation are really proud, especially the ones that's in America. And y'all are pretty much approaching your end, with these what you call it, this AI thing is really starting to take storm, and it's really like a booming field. And it's to the point where people have to relearn new skills now just to even pretty much be employed. And this is Proverbs chapter 16. I'm going to start at verse. Probably just make it only one precept right there. One verse anyway. I'm just bring out verse 5. It says, everyone that is proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord, though hand join in hand, he shall not be unpunished. And for the most part, I wanted to just mention the fact that a lot of these people that work in these big tech companies, they would be proud eventually, especially if they're not on a contract, like they're on a permanent, W-2, and getting paid that good money, whether they work in, mostly it's going to be salary position. So you could get in the office, maybe they start at 9, probably get a little 30 minutes late or whatever the case is, and it's not really going to affect their pay because it's a salary position, and you're getting paid for the work that you're going to do and the work that you're completing. And sometimes you may have it to where some people in the company, they have other people under them to do more work, and they have other people in the company to chill, have some time to gossip and conversate amongst themselves, and you know what I mean, and bullshit basically. You know, they do some work here and there, you know, but it's like they just really, for the most part, you got some dead weight in the company. And you got AI now. They're starting to really go as far as eliminating as much dead weight as possible, you know, mainly with positions that pretty much hold no purpose having a person to fill that role when you could have a robot to do, you know, like I said earlier, 10 to 100 times, you know, better. And let me bring this out. It says Isaiah chapter 30, verse 1. Woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin, that walk to go down into Egypt, and have not asked at my mouth, to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. Therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion. All right. And it says, for his princes were at Zoan, and his ambassadors came to Hanes. They were all ashamed of a people that could not profit them, nor be in help, nor profit, but for a shame, but a shame, and also a reproach. Right. And skipping down to verse 7, it says, the Egyptians shall help in vain, and to no purpose. Therefore have I cried concerning this, their strength is to sit still. Right. And they won't, you know, help you people that have lost their jobs like that. You know, you gotta just find a way to pretty much to get yourself back on your feet. And this is a huge humbling to not only the world, and talking about you, you know, most particularly you woman, like, you know, this is really a humbling, because it's to really show you that whole independent shit where you think you don't need a man, you think you can do battle by yourself, think this government that Esau has put in place to benefit you woman, help you woman go to college and all that shit, to think that you're gonna have freedom and liberty from serving a man. You see, Esau's bringing AI into the companies, and all that liberty shit is coming to an end. AI is ruining your liberation, and AI very well may just be a thing that is gonna make you woman have to humble down. Cause shit, you got it to where AI, you know, it's to the point where you got even just this newer generation that they're even dealing with AI chatbots. I don't know how the hell they get emotionally you know, turned on. I don't know how they get turned on to that sexually, to deal with a artificial intelligent, you know, chatbot or whatever the case is. You know, this whole thing they have with AI, that they're dealing with an AI partner, doing AI dating, so that they won't have to socialize with a actual person, because they know that, you know, dealing with these average women nowadays, it's like, it's to the point where they're not even authentic. So, you know, AI is really bringing you women very low. And it's ultimately to show you that this devil Esau doesn't have your back. It's ultimately show you, even the whole world in general, that Esau is not to be trusted. Sirach chapter 12 says, never trust thine enemy. You know? And you woman, ultimately, you're going to see that in a huge way. You know? The jobs, that's just the first step. You know? That's just the first. Then it's going to come to a point where, you know, you're just going to be desperate, you know, when you get your job taken, and you're going to have to find another career, or, you know, and God forbid, getting laid off or getting terminated, it's hard to find another job. Even if you're Edomite, they're struggling to find jobs as I speak. So, you know, you might even just have to be, selling yourself to even just get by. And like I already said, the average man already waking up to your bullshit. So, you know, then when you have it to where anarchy and purge like situations are gonna happen on the streets, especially when blackouts start happening and race wars are gonna be happening, like civil wars is gonna be going on, like societal wars within the cities and where people dwell in towns, you know, suburban areas and so on and so forth. Yeah, people are gonna be clashing and raging with each other. And during that time period particularly, you ultimately gonna be, a damsel in distress. You're gonna be seeking for a man of the Lord in that time. A man that could protect you. And chiefly is gonna be a man of the Lord. So yeah. And if you don't see how Esau is just pretty much the devil right now, well, I don't know what it's gonna take for you to see that later on down the pipeline, because it's just gonna get worse. Because this is his tender mercy right now. We haven't been in his full wrath yet. So imagine what he will do in that time period when he really starts to let loose on the world and show the world that he, has really been holding back this whole time of being the devil. And you women are gonna see, you're gonna be up for a very rude awakening in that time. Guarantee you that. But anyways, end the lesson right there. Like stay called, Allah, Yahweh, Bashim, Al Shah, Bashim, Rakakadash. The honest apostle, Elsmir Milson, peace out, teacher, full Shalom.